Howdy, folks, and welcome to the SoundAppraiser podcast. My name's Cary Nightingale. With me, as always, is Kevin Niebrick. Kevin, how you doing tonight?
Doing fine.
That's great to hear. Tonight, we've got a theme for you, and hopefully a consistent message. We're going to be talking about songs that have excellent lyrics, outstanding lyrics. And we're going to have an in-depth conversation about what we really like and what we maybe don't like about lyrics in general, and more specifically to a couple of songs. We reviewed and rated using the TuneScore 3 songs. 2 were my suggestion, and 1 was Kevin's, I believe, that have excellent lyrics. And those are, Kevin's suggestion was Relative Surplus Value by the Weakerthans. And then mine were Lana Del Rey's Born to Die and Joy Division's The Eternal. So, Kev, I think it might be instructive for us to go ahead and start with the TuneScores and kind of meander through, and we'll end up talking about a lot of things related to lyrics, what we like, what we don't like, what constitutes good lyrics, and contrast that with what constitutes bad lyrics, even though I don't think there are bad lyrics in this set of songs at all. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds great.
So why don't we start with one of my suggestions, which was Born to Die. And it was my suggestion. So Kev, do you want to go ahead and start by prosecuting its composition?
Sure.
I have a feeling we're gonna highlight at least one thing that would be a lyric writing sin in Kevin's eyes in this song. Go ahead.
So Lana Del Rey, for me, for this song, Born to Die, the final composition score for me was 2.9 out of 4. Things I liked about it, I really appreciate that it has a beautiful intro. I was confused about the melody. It goes back and forth, and it kind of feels either triumphant or defeated, and it gives the piece an odd ghostly feel. I'm not sure it fits with the lyrics that were written. Still on the fence about that. One of the things I disliked about the lyrics specifically is that maybe there were one too many references, one too many idioms that were used. Feet don't fail me now, lost but now I am found, I can see but once I was blind. Usually if I, in my own writing, what I like to do is if I want to use an idiom, I'll try and rephrase it in a way to hopefully surprise the audience, or at least sound a bit more clever. My favorite line in the whole piece is it by mistake or design? I thought that was a really good line. The rhythm, I enjoy the rhythm, a bit distracting for me, and the harmony is excellent, but there was a vocal harmony that was noticeably absent for the phrase "we were born to die," and I thought that might have been a mistake. I think that it would have been nice to hear it in there. But tell me why I'm wrong. How do you feel about the composition?
A little more strongly, I would say. You rated it 2.9 out of 4 compared to my 3.4 out of 4. It sounded like you received a little bit of a mixed message between some of the positivity and some of the negativity, both in lyrics and background music. I think that was intentional. It was described as having this theme of gentle apocalypse, sort of a fatalistic approach to love. And despite being in a major key, there are a lot of minor chords and melodic runs that fit that gentle apocalypse feeling that I think the writers were aiming for. In the studio version, the electronic drums carry that rhythmic load, so I think it's really strong on rhythm, but stronger in lyrics and melody, despite the cliches. I noticed them as well. Feet don't fail me now, I actually like. Blind but now I can see, or once was blind, now I see, something like that, however that goes. That one I don't like as much, and I would rewrite that if it were up to me. But the song's already had its success, so it won't be up to me. And I do like that they're both followed up by more original phrasing, so it's not like they're mortal sins. When it comes to the performance, I thought it was actually really strong, 1.1 out of 1.2. Lana has a highly emotive voice, coupled with the way the strings highlight that chord progression and provide melodies of their own. There's a lot of feel to the recording. And production wise, a 1.0 out of 1.2. You can call me old fashioned, but I actually like that completely out of place hype man vocal sample that happens every few bars. That louda. The song structure is pretty common, but the arrangement of the instrumentation within it works very well. But how did you feel about the performance and the production?
I think we were closer on performance and production than we were on composition. I thought that beautiful vocalist. There's some dynamic change in there and different lyrical cadences that really break up the piece effectively. For performance, I gave her a 1.1 out of 1.2. For production, I gave her a zero point 0.9, a little bit lower. One of the things that really took me out of the piece was that the instrumentation, the drums, the vocals, they're all very well done, but it sounds like they're fighting for attention. So a little bit less for me. As far as appeal goes, their final score there was 2.8. Emotion just missed me just a little bit, but it's still pretty high. Innovation, I've never heard anything like it. I gave it a zero point 0.3 out of zero point 0.4. Repeat listenability, a little bit lower for me, but still pretty strong at a 1.3. How does it hate for appeal? I know this one's a little more personal to you.
Right. I do have a more personal attachment to this song based on one of the early times that I had heard it. The appeal for me, 3.0 out of 3.6, from the imagery of the lyrics to the emotion in the vocals to that manipulative string score. I feel it. And it's a rare day that I skip this track if it comes up on my playlist. My overall tune score for this one is an 8.5 out of 10. Kev, what was yours?
Uh, Got a 7.7 out of me.
Still strong, still quite listenable. So that's Born to Die. We talked a little bit about the lyrical sin in this one being overuse of cliches. And that's one of my 10 commandments of lyric writing. That's actually number 7. Thou shalt use original ideas more than cliches. But Kev, what are some other things that, not necessarily lyric sins of this song, but what are some other things that turn you off from a set of lyrics?
There's really only a couple of things that really are negatives and hard nosed for me. For the most part, I like when songs do something new, something interesting, and I really appreciate those pieces. So I have a lot of things that are, I would say, that you should always strive for. But there's only really a short list of 3 things that I really dislike. One is overuse of monosyllabic rhymes. Simplistic rhymes are going to happen, but if you can go above and beyond and throw in some, 2 syllable, 3 syllable words in there, it's going to make it a lot more interesting. You're going to have a more interesting rhythm, possibly, by doing that. Simple rhyme schemes as well for me. I try to steer clear of them if I can. Try to make something more interesting. If I'm going to have a simple rhyme scheme, maybe an A B, the next phrase will hopefully be ABB. And the phrase after that hopefully will turn into something different. And then we'll go back to that first rhyme scheme for the next verse or something. But if you do that, it effectively breaks up the piece and makes it a little more interesting, a little more fun to listen to. And then finally, the one thing I'm just kind of tired of, I guess, is just writing the same song over and over again. How many songs are there about love? You know, I would really appreciate, at this point in my life, I really appreciate when somebody can tell me a story that I haven't heard yet, or express a feeling that everyone's felt, maybe, but in a new and interesting way. So love songs aren't off the table. It's just seems like a easier song to write because, again, if you're stealing idioms and throwing them in there, it's easier to write.
Well, it seems like a love song is very easy to write, but it's very difficult to write well or to write freshly,
Mm.
if that makes sense. And I just want to clarify something. When you mentioned the rhyme scheme, so I think the example you used was if I'm using an ABAB rhyme scheme, in verse 1, then you would want to use maybe a or A-B-B-A in the second verse. Did I hear that correctly?
No, to clarify, I guess I should say that maybe in the first verse, I just think a different pattern would be interesting. So I still want to see if I'm going into the next verse. I would probably start off at the same A B A B, maybe the first four lines. If there's two stanzas for the verse, the first stanza is going to have A B A B. The second stanza maybe it'll have an A B B B, and then when you get to maybe a bridge or a part in between the verse and first verse and the second verse, maybe in the chorus, you'll have a totally different rhyme scheme. So I just like to see those sections broken up. For me, it keeps me kind of going along and just listening to it effectively. If it was all A B A B A B A B A B A B, that becomes repetitive, and it becomes a strain to listen to.
Okay. Okay. I can follow with that. I will note, however, usually that's A B A B in the first verse, C D C D in the second verse, and then E F E F in the chorus, for example. They're usually not the same ending syllable for the rhyme, what most people write, I think.
Depends on the piece. But I would say that you're more right than what I said.
Well, as far as advice to songwriters to be, the lessons or takeaways there about rhyme scheme or structure or format is to vary the rhymes. Sometimes they should be monosyllabic, sometimes polysyllabic. It's good to have an internal rhyme once in a while. Don't be slavish to alternating rhymes or the ABAB format or couplet format, which would be AABB and its variations. So don't just stick with one thing, like mix it up a little bit. I think that's the best advice that we can give. But overall, look at the structure and see how it fits together. And if you do something for an entire verse, try and stick with that structure the next time that you have a verse. That would be my recommendation. And my sixth commandment of lyric writing, which is, thou shalt be consistent with thy rhyme scheme and structure if you're using one.
How would you feel about we listened to a song that a redditor posted, and in that case, I think I'm not sure which part of the song it was. I think it may have been the chorus, but there was an I believe it was an ABB rhyme scheme in the second half of that chorus, and then the next time we heard the chorus, it had an ABC. I think it went to a totally different line, and I thought it was very interesting because it was so different, and we kind of expected the repetition of that phrase, and then they ended it differently. I thought that was interesting. I thought that was a good choice. So it does break your commandment, but it was done for a purpose. So it broke a rule, but it had an end purpose to it. How do you feel about that?
Right. That was just it was the salt in my soup. It really made my day hearing that. And actually, I'm looking at it right now. It was posted by a civilian. The first chorus was an A B B C rhyme scheme. The second chorus was A B B B, and it was a fresh sound. And I don't know if that necessarily breaks the commandment number 6 of my lyric writing commandments, but it is something that's fun, fresh. It's never a bad idea to do something that actually I shouldn't say that. Sometimes it's a bad idea to do something that no one's ever heard before, but here it's enough of a slight departure from the norm that it really worked well in this songwriter's favor. So that's been Born to Die and a little bit about some common lyric writing sins and some things that we look for. I think it's time for a short break. And then we'll be back with Relative Surplus Value by the Weakerthans and its TuneScore. We'll be right back. Howdy, folks. We're back with Relative Surplus Value by the Weakerthans. Now, Kevin, this was your recommendation, so I'll begin with the litigation of its composition. And overall, I thought it was strong. Probably not as strong as your thoughts on this, because I know you're a bit of a fanboy for John K. Samson, the principal songwriter of this tune. But I will say I am a sucker for a good tremolo guitar, which is featured heavily in this track. It garnered a 3.3 out of 4 for the composition from me. The melody does seem a little stilted at times because it has to fit lyrics that don't really feature much of a structure, but it does fit very well. Now, as for the lyrics, I thought there were a couple of really brilliant lines. I think one of them you don't like, Kev, which is heart-pumping pure minibar. I really like that one. Pause feels like an extra year of high school, and market opens in Tokyo. I thought those were really solid lines, and the entire last section, which features a little bit of a twist to it. Any rhyming seems purely coincidental. I think I found 2 times that there are rhymes. But I think that's okay because the narrative does give such rich imagery. For the most part, very concrete. It's very easy to visualize what's going on in this song. So that's my take on the composition. Kev, what's your take?
I think actually you rated it higher in composition than I did, just by a point. They ended up with a 3.2 out of 4 for me. I like specifically that the lyrics in this case effectively tell a story. There's a lot of imagery that's unique. It's my least favorite line. You're right. Of the whole song is that my heart pumping pure mini bar, but at least it's unique. It's a different way of expressing that feeling, I guess, of being hungover. As far as the performance and production of this song, this one in particular is a bit sloppy. This recording, so it got a little bit, a few less points than normal. 1.0 out of 1.2. Production. The only note I have was that it sounds more like a live recording than a studio recording. And the one thing that I didn't like was that you can kind of hear the bass at the beginning, and somewhere in the middle it catches back up, but you can't really hear it throughout the whole piece. I think everything else kind of drowns it out. So they end up with a 0.9 out of 1.2 for production. How did you feel about the performance and production of this one?
Really similarly, actually. It did sound like a live recording, and I might have given it the benefit of the doubt for that, but I thought it was accurate. I thought it had good feel. I rated it both for performance and production 0.9 out of 1.2 for each. As far as the mix goes, I thought it was a good mix for the 2 guitars. I like it when there are 2 guitars on a track and they don't play the same thing. And as always, I think it's a bold choice to produce a song without a chorus or anything resembling a hook. Now, as far as its appeal goes, a little better than 3/4 credit for each the emotion and the repeat listenability. I don't think there's much innovative about this track. But the fact that the narrative seems to take place over the course of a couple of days, it sounds like he's maybe traveling to a convention or to the home office, might cause this to be a little less relatable, at least to me. I think I would be able to put myself in the situation a little bit easier if it were just more a moment in time. It does make me wonder. It leaves me with questions, which is often a good thing. It doesn't neatly wrap everything up. I wonder what made this character's stock plummet. It's probably just his alcoholism and general demeanor, but that makes it even less relatable to me. It's still a solid tune with an interesting story. So overall, a 7.9 out of 10 from me.
You're not far off from my score, I don't think, terribly. My appeal for this song, they end up with a 3.2 for me. The emotion hit me. innovation, zero point 0.3 out of zero point 0.4, almost all the way. What I like about this song is it's telling me a story I haven't heard before. I haven't heard a song about this similar topic. Repeat listenability is for me is all the way at the top, just because I liked everything about the song and how it came together. I really dig the energy of this piece, and again, those last four lines are pretty amazing.
Do you want to sing those last four lines for the folks at home?
Not a chance in hell. But we can talk about it real quick, and what it does is there's misdirection there, and I like to see that. I think that is the a key component in a very well told joke, in a very clever turn of phrase is going to be misdirection, and I think they did that well in this case. The fourth line feels like you feel like it's going to end at the third line, and then it keeps going for me.
So that last section that we're talking about is, so what I'm trying to say, what I'm asking is, I know we haven't talked in a while, but could you come get me?
And that
And that last line is really what makes the entire song.
and that's that third line. You think he's going to answer the question, and he doesn't. He kind of drags on and adds something else in there, and that for me is what gave it a little bit of misdirection. I really like that. That was a good choice.
So, Kevin, knowing that you're a huge fan of John K. Samson, the way he writes, this song in particular, can you talk about some of the things in this set of lyrics that really grab you, that really abide by your rules of lyric writing?
Absolutely. So there's six things that I think that I really enjoy about any piece, that kind of makes it feel like it goes above and beyond. Like the writing's a little bit more interesting for me personally. John K. Samson in this song, he uses a lot of unique imagery. The whole song, as a whole, there's a lot of clever words spoken and ideas. The lyrical rhythm is not repetitive or boring. It's somewhat interesting. Again, I didn't like that "my heart pumping pure" mini bar, but the rhythm of that line is really nice. Sincerity, he's honestly trying to tell a story from the perspective of another person, and I think that he nails it. That last stanza has misdirection, which was my number six thing that I look for when I listen to songs and listen to lyrics. Is there anything that was in here that was on your Ten Commandments?
No, I don't think so. It didn't sexualize children, fetishize guns, glorify violence, or break the fourth wall, or praise, have the narrator praising himself excessively or ridiculing the innocent. If anything, the hangdog character is the narrator. So certainly didn't break any of those. It's not using a rhyme scheme. There's really no cliches, other than maybe what I'm trying to say is, I know we haven't talked in a while. I don't think that's a cliche, not an idiomatic one. So I don't consider that a problem. I think for their intended audience, it's appropriately clever. I think it's a cohesive concept and message, and the style throughout is pretty strong. There are some lines that I don't like or maybe don't get. The year after Jeremy died, and then having the elevator's too fast, makes my ears pop. There's a line about that. Some stuff that I don't love, but no, I don't think, as long as he took more than 40 minutes to write the lyrics, uh, that's my ninth commandment of lyric writing. I think they did a fine job. It's not my favorite story to listen to, because it is kind of a dopey, down on his luck character.
Mm-hmm.
I like a little more triumph in my rock music,
Okay.
but that's more of an appeal thing. I can still recognize that the lyrics are strong and are strongly written and delivered. So yeah, I have no real problem with that. But folks, that's been Relative Surplus Value by the Weakerthans. It's time for another short break, and then we'll be back with The Eternal by Joy Division. Back after this. Howdy, folks. We're back with another song that doesn't feature much of a rhyme scheme, yet we think that it has some pretty solid lyrics to it. The song is The Eternal. The artist is Joy Division. This was my recommendation. So, Kev, if you would kindly tell us about the composition.
So the overall composition score I gave for Joy Division for the Eternal is 3.0 out of 4. The things I liked about it, I thought that the haunting melody was very appropriate. I liked that the drum beat, I think there was a bass drum, mimics a heartbeat. The lyrics are very poetic, and they attempt to convey a variety of emotions. My favorite line in the piece was "Cry like a child, though these years make me older." How about you? Where did they sit on your composition score?
Just a little bit higher at 3.3 out of 4 for me. I think the lyrics for this, they're well crafted, but frankly very touching. I felt it garnered the full point on lyrics, and I thought the melody, rhythm, and even the harmony were strong. I think the way that the piano was played, it didn't just emphasize the harmonies, but it also provided some melodies and counter melodies that really augmented the piece. I could absolutely imagine this song being played just on piano with a single voice and being just as powerful or even more so than the official Joy Division version. Lyrically, we don't have a rhyme scheme. It's just narrative and imagery. And it ranges more towards poetry and abstraction than the rhymeless song that we just heard from the Weakerthans. There is one awkward line, except like a curse and unlucky deal, but I think it could actually sound better with the right punctuation, except like a curse and unlucky deal. But I think it's overshadowed anyway by my favorite lines: praise to the glory of loved ones now gone, and try to cry out in the heat of the moment, possessed by a fury that burns from inside. I think those are beautiful lines. I think that warrants a very high score for lyrics. Very evocative. The performance on this one, zero point 0.8 out of 1.2, so about two-thirds credit. When the guitar finally does come in around verse 4, this is the big issue that I had with it. It sounds terrible. Uh, and I think it's more the way it's being played. It sounds flatulent, if I can be charitable with that description. The last few seconds also fall apart, but honestly, I kind of do too when I hear the song. So I can understand that. But a solid performance at two-thirds credit. And same thing, two-thirds credit, zero point 0.8 out of 1.2 for the production. The keys are kind of hard to hear in some parts, which obscures the overall harmony. There's some interesting stuff with the synths, especially between verse 2 and verse 3. And as always, it's a bold choice to produce a tune that does not have a hook. But again, this is probably not something that you would hear much on modern rock radio, let alone the modern rock radio of the era. But that's my take on performance and production. Kev, how'd you feel about it?
Pretty high. I thought that the vocal delivery in the performance was appropriate. There's a couple things about the vocal delivery that I disliked. There's a long pause after scattering flowers, which causes a traffic jam for the following line, which is washed down by the rain. And it kind of says it real fast to get them all in there. So he kind of shoehorns all those words into that one line. And then I also noticed the same problem you had with accentuating certain words. I heard wastefully spent and an unlucky deal. I thought that was could have been delivered more appropriately. The production I didn't have any specific problems with. Both categories ended up with a 1.0 out of 1.2. And then as far as appeal goes, it hit me. So emotion was almost full, 1.3 out of 1.6. Innovation, zero point 0.3 again. I've never heard, maybe I've never heard this story told, or I've never heard a feeling expressed quite this way. Repeat listenability for me is pretty high, 1.3 with a final score of 2.9 for appeal. But how's it hit you?
Well, the message that I get from this song is actually very positive despite the funereal context and imagery. The memories and experiences of loved ones now gone will carry on eternally, and the rage or anguish or sorrow that one feels when facing such a loss is both unique to the mourner and universal to the mourning. The emotionality delivered by this song to the listener, in this case, the listener's me, because I'm the one giving it a score, it's almost too much, but I think it still bears repeat listens. And this is a case where a song can deliver an extreme amount of emotion to the listener, and that actually reduces the ability to listen to it multiple times. This is a song that I rated fully 1.6 out of 1.6 for emotion, but only a 1.4 out of 1.6 for repeat listenability for that reason. I am actually a human, despite reports to the contrary. I just am not terribly emotional. And I don't necessarily like to have emotionality foisted upon me. I'm not going to go watch Field of Dreams because by the time Kevin Costner gets to have a catch with his dad, there's a possibility that I might break my 2 decade long streak of not crying. So sorry, Field of Dreams. And sorry, Joy Division on that one. Now, Kev, you mentioned something about shoehorning lyrics in. And if I look at the lyrics, there's something about wastefully spent. Now that could be the melody, but it could also be a lyrical rhythm, which you were just praising on a Weakerthans song. So if this had been written not by Ian Curtis, but by John K. Sampson, would you have given that a pass?
Well, first of all, I'm not crying, you're crying. Second of all, you're absolutely right. There's some films that you can't watch every day because they tug at your heartstrings. Um, no, I don't know. I don't know the answer to your question. I maybe there is some bias there where I really appreciate the artist. I don't know if it's that or if it's the way that they independently, creatively write their material. And I think I'm leaning heavily towards that. I think that if I were to mess with these lines at all, if I were gonna to revamp any of this stuff, I might take a look at how many syllables are necessary for this line. How many beats do I want to throw in there? Are they all going to fit on that line? Does it fit a rhythmic cadence that I want to hear? I think the line that I was worried about was scattering flowers washed down by the rain. I don't think there was anything wrong with that lyric, but the delivery of that lyric, there's a long pause after the scattering flowers, and then washed down by the rain. And it doesn't feel so much like rhythm as it feels like hurriedly trying to put those words together to make them fit that line. Um, I think
Okay,
without that
so
pause, I think that it would be a solid line.
okay, so this is an interesting conversation to have, or at least a point to make.
Hmm.
And that is, where do we draw the line or differentiate between the lyrics as they're written, the melody and rhythm as they're written, and then the performance? Because that very well could be just a flub, a mistake
Yeah.
on the part of Ian Curtis. And that was the take that, it was the best take overall.
Hmm.
And so it needed to go in there. But if you were covering this, I mentioned this would be, I think, a really powerful, maybe more powerful song if it's just vocal and piano. You mentioned on a similarly produced song that's just, well, not similarly produced to the Eternal, but the Adele song, Someone Like You,
Hmm.
that's just piano, just vocals. It has a very lonely feeling. And I feel like that could be an excellent way to hear these lyrics with that melody and that harmony and rhythm behind it.
Hmm.
But that's what I'm getting at. Scattering flowers, washed down by the rain. That could just be the fault of the performance. But if you look at it in terms of how would I sing that if I'm just sat down at a piano, am I going to keep it the same way that Ian Curtis did? Or am I going to change it up just ever so slightly so that it sounds more like me, maybe more, in my voice and my artistry, or just better, just objectively better, that has a smarter flow to it? What do you think?
And there's just looking at it. So when I rated it, I did detract from performance for this part. Um, but it's a toss up. There's a couple things you could do to fix this line if you agreed, as you're the songwriter, you didn't approve of this line and you're just like, something's wrong with it. I want to change it so it sounds perfect. One of the things I would first do is see if getting rid of that pause would get rid of that traffic jam. And so if I did that, scattering flowers washed down by the rain would be fine. We're just missing that little pause. And if I didn't like the way that sounded either, I might look at syllables and count my syllables and see if one of the words could have another syllable in it. If I replaced the word down with away, scattering flowers washed away by the rain, maybe adding another syllable, it might even create more of a traffic jam. But, that's how I play with things. I'll take something away, I'll add something back, I'll see what I can do to manipulate that line to make it sound more interesting or fit the cadence better. And that may be the case. We don't know how many revisions this song went through, but who knows? He could have played with that line and said, "Screw it, I'm done. That's what it is. That's all they get."
He might have written it in 39 minutes. Boy, that'd be a sin, wouldn't it? Well, Kev, you bring up a good point about how you go about making a potential change. Once you've identified something doesn't sound quite right well, this would be for your lyrics that you're writing more so than a Joy Division song that's older than either of us. What are some tools that you use to help you do that? Once you kind of have to feel it, you have to identify this could be problematic or this could sound better. But what are some tools that you use once you've identified something?
So I've always got a number of tabs open when I'm writing a song in my web browser. So I'm looking at rhyming dictionaries are always very helpful. I usually like to start with the last line of every stanza and I figure out what that line needs to be, make it as interesting as I can, and then I rhyme with that word. I'll move up and I'll do that according rhyme. I'll write that one in by searching through all those rhymes and finding one that fits the context of that stanza and fits the piece. So rhyme zone for me, but any rhyming dictionary is very important. If you're having trouble, if you land on a word and you're like, I want to say this, but that word either it rhymes and it's outside the rhyme scheme, or it's too many syllables. Anything that's wrong with it. Thesaurus, an online thesaurus. Type in the word you're looking for, the word you're using. Type in the SYN and search for it, and boom, you'll have synonyms for that word. You can hunt through those. Antonyms also are very important. Maybe you want to say the same thing you're saying, but you want to say the opposite. Throw a double negative in there, whatever you're doing. Antonym is another powerful search term. Finally, the biggest one for me may or may not help a lot of people, but we talked about idioms or cliches. Trying to get rid of those if you can, just because they've been said before. People have heard them 1,000 times. If that's something you were interested in trying to get away from, you could go to idioms.thefreedictionary.com, any site that'll talk to you about idioms, but this one in particular is pretty good because it lays them all out. Just type in a single word in the search bar, and you'll have every idiom related to that word in seconds. And you can hunt through those, and maybe you'll find material. If you're struggling with where to go in the piece and you're not sure what the next stanza is going to be about, search through those words. You're like, I want to use the word fire and I want to use an idiom, but I want to play with it. And maybe it'll get you going off in different directions. It's very, very good tool, I've found.
That's excellent, and I had not heard of and have never used The idiom, would you say idiom.thefreedictionary.com?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I had never used that tool. I don't think I use a lot of idioms in my writing when I'm crafting songs, but that's a good one. I do definitely agree with Rhyme Zone, with thesaurus for both synonyms and antonyms. The only thing that I would add on, really, as a tool, it's something you can make yourself. It's having a framework. What's the message that you're trying to get across to your audience? And make notes. In verse 1, I want to convey this part of the story. And then you can figure out how you're going to phrase that story, how you're going to relate that story to your audience. In verse 2, here's the next part. Here's the next part after that. Oh, but this is the most important thing. So I should probably repeat that if I'm going to have a chorus, which, even though we just talked about 3 songs and 2 of them don't have choruses or vocal or any kind of a hook, it is usually advisable for terms of pop success, popularity. It is usually advisable to have a hook or 2, and and have a chorus. Give the folks something to sing along with.
Give them a little repetition so they walk away and they still remember your song.
Right. Repetition legitimizes. Repetition legitimizes. Repetition legitimizes is the phrase, the catchphrase featured by Adam Neely, excellent music theorist, YouTuber. I would invite you to check him out. I would also invite all of our listeners to go check out these songs that we've talked about: "The Eternal" by Joy Division, "Relative Surplus Value" by the Weakerthans, and "Born to Die" by Lana Del Rey. Go check them out. Come back, comment here, let us know, what did you like about those songs? What did you not like? Where were we right? Where were we wrong? Let's get a good conversation going, and hopefully some of our tools and some of our commandments or must do's and must not do's will be helpful for anyone who's out there in the community looking to craft songs of their own. We look forward to hearing those as well. But I think it's time to wrap up. I've been Cary Nightingale. That's been Kevin Niebrick. Thank you so much for tuning into the SoundAppraiser podcast. We'll see you in the next one, which will be featuring duets. Take care.